Now let's talk about the joints within SQL. This is a very important topic that we're actually going to cover in more depth in a later section. But let's just get a basic overview of why you would want to join two tables together. If you're coming from a Power BI background, it might be easy to understand that you would relate two different tables together because different tables have different information living on a different table. And in order to get the complete picture, you might want to have some sort of joining between these tables. But if you're just new to the data and you're just starting with SQL series, we'll be walking through why you might join two tables together in this video. So to get started, I'm just going to select star from our order tables like we've done a couple of times so far. So that's just giving us all of our orders. And recall that this orders table just has really high level information about the individual orders. For example, the order ID, the order date, the customer ID. So this isn't giving us any information regarding on how the customer paid for it, when it was shipped, or what quantity the customer purchased. This is just giving us information that we can join to other tables to get the deeper information. So like we've seen before, we can look at the sales order line table in order to see the specific information regarding the quantity and unit price and all of the good stuff. So in order to get that all in one view, we have to join these two tables together. So right now, the from, we can type in join and we can just need to specify the table that we want. For example, sales order lines, we need to specify a column that these two tables can join on, and that's easy for us to see. We have this order ID column on the sales order table. We also have the on the order lines table. So we just need to say on and we can look for order ID on the other order lines table. And I have a nice IntelliSense which is going to type this all out. But if you want to just type that ourselves, it's orderlines.orderID. So make sure you specify the table name and then dot the column name. Since these two columns are the exact same between these tables, so we need to say on order lines order ID equals orders order ID. And with that, we can now execute this query, and we'll see that as if right now, before we execute the query, we have a decent number of columns, maybe 15 or so columns. But if we now execute this query, all of the columns that live on the order lines table are now going to be part of our select list. So if I click F5, and once that finishes executing, we will see that all of our columns that we are now bringing back. So if we scroll to the right a little bit, we will see many more columns at our disposal. For example, we now see our quantity, our unit price, our tax rate, everything that we've seen in previous videos when we were doing grouping and everything like that. We also see that we have 231,000 rows. So we've expanded our row set as well. Now if we look at order ID, we see that we have a couple of records for this order ID too, because the order lines table has two records for that order ID. So it's actually expanding our columns and our rows if there are more records on one table than the other. So we're just selecting all of our columns, but we can specify which column that we want to bring back. For example, if I only want to now see our order lines column, we can type in orderlines.star, and that's just going to give us the order lines columns. Let's execute that. So now we just have our order lines column, as you can see. And if we just want to bring back a single column from a certain table, we can do that as well. So I'm going to put a comma and type in order date and click F5. And at the end of our select list, since we've put that at the end, this order date column is now coming from our orders table. So we have all of our order lines column followed by a single order date column. Let's go through one more joint example. So as we see, if I were to bring back, let's just do all the orders columns. So I see that I have a customer ID here, That is another ID that's going to allow us to join to another table. So we can join to the customers table. So if I want to go below this first join, I can now join on my customer table. So sales customers on, I can start looking for customer ID customers. Customer ID equals orders.customer ID. So now we're joining to our customers table to get all of the relevant customer information. So if I change my orders to customer.star, I'm now just going to see all of my customers columns. For our demo, we're going to join two tables and seeing which columns that we can bring back since we've joined these tables together. But that might not always be your use case. For example, what if we just want to join a table to other table just to add something to the where clause, which is perfectly fine. For example, we have our customer name here. Let's say we just want to search for where our customer name equals Sarah Newton. We can do that. We can just add this to the where clause and say where customer name equals Sarah Newton. We don't even have to return a column from the customer table. We can simply say, give me back the order date. Let's do order date. And let's also get back our unit price from our order lines table. And now we can click F5 and execute. And now we're just getting back the columns that we specified. So this is just to be specific here. This is coming from the orders table. This is coming from the borderlines table. So we're getting these two columns back from our first two tables. And we're searching for the customer name, which comes from the customers table. So now we can run that again, just to make sure that this works and it's working perfectly. So you can join all the tables you want and you don't even have to select from them. You can use them in the select, you can use them in the where, the group by or order by. All those columns are at your disposal. But you don't need to service them in the select list of your query. Joining tables is extremely important. There are several different kinds of joins that we'll be going over in a later section. But until then, this is going to give you an overall basics of how and why you would join with SQL.